Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Inside Guns with your host, me, the Yankee Marshal. Today, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to stick to one topic all the way through the show because I think it's a very important topic, and there's a lot of questions and a lot of misconceptions out there right now about it, and I want to do my best to kind of clear up some of the false beliefs that are out there or the anxieties that people are having for little or no reason right now. And what I'm talking about is the new rules for pistol braces. There seems to be a lot of people out there right now that are spreading a lot of misinformation about the new rules, really trying to make it seem like it's something it isn't. Now, I'm not going to lie and say that this isn't an affront to our rights. It is an affront to our rights. It's an infringement on our ability to exercise our Second Amendment rights, which I believe is unconstitutional. But is it a new infringement? No. It's not. It's the same one we've been facing for a long, long time. It's still just that, NFA garbage. They haven't really changed anything. Now, I know a lot of people are trying to convince you otherwise. They're spewing stuff to you like, oh my God, they're going to turn millions of innocent people into felons. And oh my God, all pistol braces are just pretty much banned now. And a gun with a pistol brace is illegal. There's no way they can even get one approved. Blah, blah, blah. And that's all bullshit, actually. And when you listen to that stuff, the thing I ask you to do is, one, make sure they give you specifics. Like, what is banned and why? Not just, everything's going to be banned. Ask them why. What's the rule you're speaking of and what's your example? And also remember their motivation. A lot of these gun channels you're seeing screaming, millions of new felons and pistol braces banned. They're doing it because they want to create controversy so that they can get views and make money. Also, they're doing it because some of their big sponsors are pistol brace manufacturers and companies that produce firearms that use pistol braces that may or may not be legal, that are trying to get you to buy their products. So keep that in mind. And also remember, a lot of these are big national gun groups that want you to send even more money to fill their giant piggy banks. So keep motivation in mind and ask for specifics when you listen to anyone. But with that in mind, like I said, I want to spend today's show talking about what is actually true and what isn't. Now, before anyone says, this is going to be long and boring and hard to follow, yeah, it is going to be. But don't be bitching because, it's no harder on you watching it than it is me making it. It's just as hard on me to make it. It is on you to actually have to sit through it. Because my brain don't work that way. I don't stay on one topic for a long time. That's just not... Anyone who comes to my live chat knows I have trouble keeping a thought in my head for more than 5 minutes. I guarantee you several times during this video, and at least once or twice already, while I'm trying to talk to you about this very serious topic, my brain has started going, what's my favorite potato chip? Or what was my neighbor's dog's name when I was 7? That's just how my brain works. So it's hard for me to stick to one topic. The fact that I'm doing it shows you I think it's important. But like I said, I want to go over some of the things about these rules. What is true now? What was true 5 years ago? What has changed? What's the reality of the situation right now? Let's just kind of talk about some of the questions people have, some of the misbeliefs people have, and just kind of take it a little bit at a time here. And during the show, I'll actually mention 2 guns that I own. One has a pistol brace, one is an SBR with a stock on it. And I'm going to show you some minor differences between the two that would help you understand some of the terms you need to understand. Now, first off, one of the main things you're going to have to pay attention to when you're looking is a pistol brace legal? Is a pistol brace not legal? There's 2 measurements you got to pay attention to. One is overall length of the weapon. The other is length of pull of the weapon. Anything under, 26 inches or under is going to be classified as a pistol. And therefore, if a brace gets put on it, it's got to be treated like a pistol with a brace on it, not a rifle putting a stock on it. So if your gun is short, you're going to have a pistol brace on it, not a stock on it, unless you make it an SBR, a short-barreled rifle. So you need to know that overall length of your gun. The overall length of that gun you're putting that stock on can't be under a certain length. You'll have to know that. And most of you already understand that. The other is length of pull. One of the things you got to pay attention to is length of pull. And that's the length basically from the stock where it touches your body or your forearm, basically the back of the stock to the face of the trigger. That's just one way to think about it. I think they actually measure from the pivot of the trigger, but they may measure from the face of the trigger. But it's basically that distance. And that can be different in two guns that are pretty much similar every other measurement. And one be an SBR. Like I'll be showing you two guns that are exactly 26.5 inches long. One's an SBR, one is a pistol with a brace on it. And I'll show you the differences between them while we go over this. But before we get into the measurements really strongly here, I want to address that one thing about the government's just made millions of gun owners felons that, had never done anything wrong in their life and blah, blah, blah. No, they haven't. For one, to be a felon, you actually have to be arrested and prosecuted and convicted. And they ain't doing that to anybody. They don't even show any interest in doing that. And really, why would they have any interest? It would just bite them in the ass. So they rather just pass laws that, wouldn't withstand court scrutiny to use them to intimidate people and never actually prosecute anyone on them because then they might get challenged and fall. But you're not going to be a felon. So if you've bought a pistol brace or a rifle that has a pistol brace or a pistol that has a pistol brace on it, and you're worried now, don't worry about it. You're not a felon. You haven't been charged with anything. You haven't been convicted with anything. And chances are you're not going to be. The new rules apply mostly to manufacturers. Now, they do apply to you too. If you buy all the parts and put something together, you're technically the manufacturer. Even if you buy a gun that was already put together and you add one part, you technically manufactured a different gun there. So you do need to be mindful of these rules. But the real thing about these rules is to put forward to all these manufacturers, that are making little pistol brace configuration guns, AR pistols with pistol braces that they're producing with the pistol brace on it, or PTRs, things like that. And they have to follow these criteria to get approval to sell these firearms. Now, if you've got an item, like I said, you've already bought it, don't worry about it. If you buy a pistol brace that in itself is legal, that doesn't mean it's legal on every gun. And if that's true today, if a pistol brace you bought today, under the new rules, if it would be a felony to use it in a certain application today, it was a felony 5 years ago too, because they were using the same criteria. The only thing is they just weren't really making a big deal out of it because they didn't care. And there weren't very many people actually getting approval for the guns that they were manufacturing. As far as manufacturers go, and there were like hardly anybody that's trying to build one at home looking to go get ATF approval over a pistol brace. I mean, who would do that? It's not a smart thing to do. So, like I said, if it's illegal now, it was illegal 5 years ago. If it was legal 5 years ago and actually got a letter from the ATF, other than a couple of rando letters that, went out from specific agents that later got corrected. If it was legal then, under the majority opinion from the ATF, it's legal now. So if you bought a gun that was legal, had a letter, it's still legal. Unfortunately, like I said, a lot of the manufacturers just got their pistol brace approved and got, this pistol brace is legal, and then manufacturers started using it in ways that wasn't legal. And also people who made parts started advertising to sell the parts so that people out there could put together a gun in a way that wasn't legal. But most of the people buying that stuff thought, well, if this is available, it must be legal to do. But that ain't the case. If you assemble it in a way that's illegal, well, that's on you. However, like I say, in my opinion, I think it's a complete total infringement. And if you decide you want to put something together, here's the best little secret for you. Even if you put a stock on a pistol, don't go telling the ATF you're doing it. Don't go asking for approval. That usually bites you in the ass. That whole better to ask forgiveness than approval thing, that's usually true, and especially in a case where you probably will never even have to ask forgiveness. So I just leave the ATF out of most of my business. That's one of the things I do. Now, some people love to make challenges against the ATF because either they're a manufacturer looking to drive up interest for their product, or they're a YouTube channel looking to drive up interest for their channel, pump their views up so they can start charging more for advertising. But it doesn't really do much good for the people out there. It just creates controversy and usually bites us in the ass as a community. This is kind of one of those cases. But like I said, let's talk about overall length of the gun. We all know what that means. If you've got a gun that's a certain length, if it's under 26 inches, don't put a stock on it. And don't put a pistol brace on it that is actually designed to be a stock, to be shot from the shoulder. Because that'll get you in trouble. Will it actually get you in trouble? Probably not. But if you're worried about being in compliance, just don't do that. Now let's talk about length of pull. Now, as I said, I've got two guns that are exactly the same length. I've got a CZ Scorpion here, which I have SBR'd, and I paid for the tax stamp and engravings and everything. And I've got a PTR here that has a brace on it. And both of these guns are exactly 26.5 inches long, or at least, within a millimeter of that measurement. They're 26.5 inches long, each of them, with the brace installed. Without the brace installed, they're definitely way under 26 inches. But with the brace installed and with the stock installed, 26.5 inches long. Now here is where they're different though. The length of pull on the PTR is 13.75 inches. When you look at where the stock hits me on the arm, it hits me on the forearm, like it's meant to interact with my forearm. The length of pull on the CZ is 14.75 inches, 1 inch longer. And if you look at where that stock hits me on my arm, it comes back more to the fold of my arm. So that is not designed to actually go over my forearm. It's too long to go over my forearm while I'm holding the grip. It would be interfering with my elbow. So that is obviously meant to be shot from the shoulder. So that's a big difference between these two guns. That overall length is the same, but the body of the PTR is longer, whereas the body of the Scorpion is shorter, stock is longer, and the pistol brace is shorter. So even though it's overall same length, that 1 extra inch of length in the length of pull, which like we said is from the back of the shoulder brace or the pistol brace to the trigger, is longer on the CZ. Therefore, it's meant to be fired from the shoulder. Whereas the PTR is shorter and it's meant to interact with your forearm, actually wrap around it. So those are the two measurements you need to pay most attention to. Overall length and length of pull. If you create a length of pull that's much over 13.5 inches, then you start getting into questionable territory. Because then it's not set up for the average arm, and they will use average, because you can't say, well, I know someone who's in the NBA who their length of pull would need to be this to shoulder. Well, that's not the average. They do it by like the average size. So whatever the average size man in America and average length of arm is, that's what they use. So NBA players don't work any more so than them saying, well, the average length of pull for a midget would be this. That doesn't work either. It's got some sort of fairness there. So that inch of difference there, that inch being in the stock instead of in the gun, makes one a pistol and the other an SBR. And therefore one of them has to have a tax stamp, one of them doesn't. And even though this was a brace on the PTR, if its length of pull was longer, it would count as a pistol, as a SBR, because it would be not meant to interact with your forearm. It'd be meant to fire from the shoulder. That's the big difference. Now, another factor is how the brace itself is designed. If it's a pistol brace, then it has to be designed to go over your forearm and secure the pistol. So it has to be split to where it can go over your arm, or it has to have a strap, or both. It just has to be designed in a way that looks like it attaches to your forearm. If it doesn't have a strap, well, then it's probably not a pistol brace and isn't designed to be used as one, so they will take that into account when they decide whether it is a pistol or an SBR. So make sure your brace has the necessary components to actually be a brace. It has to be designed to work with your arm, or at least be able to work with your forearm. Whereas if you look at the brace on an SBR, it doesn't have any of that stuff because it's not meant to go to your forearm. It's not meant to be strapped to you. It's meant to just go against your shoulder, so it's different. Another difference is the pad on the back. If you notice on most pistol braces, well, since they're not supposed to be shouldered, there's no padding on the back. If there is padding on the back, that lends to the belief that maybe that is designed to be shouldered, not be a pistol brace. That's why you don't see padding on the backs of most of them. Whereas on an SBR stock, there's padding on the back because it is meant to be shouldered. That's one thing they'll look at also when they decide if it's an SBR or a pistol with a brace on it. Now, another thing that they take into account when deciding if it's an SBR or a pistol with a brace on it is overall weight. And this is one that was confusing to me too. This is one I've been getting a lot of questions about. And a lot of people say, what does the overall weight have to do with anything? And I'll admit I had to go, I don't freaking know. But now I understand. I read the report from the ATF, etc. So now I understand what they mean by overall weight. If you have a gun, even if the measurements are right for it to be a pistol and you put a pistol brace on it, but the gun itself is so freaking heavy, maybe it's belt fed and it's bulky and it's hard to hold, and it's not meant to be it's not meant to be held with one hand, and you put a brace on it. Well, if you're not going to be shooting it with one hand, what's the point of a pistol brace? Therefore, they're going to look at that like you're wanting to put that to your shoulder to help stabilize it, because you're not going to be shooting it one-handed. So a gun actually has to be light enough, I guess, which is to me kind of arbitrary, to be fired from one hand for it to be a pistol with a brace on it. Once it reaches a certain weight, they consider it a two-handed firearm, which is not a pistol. The definition of pistol is to be designed to be shot with one hand. It's a two-handed firearm, and therefore you're going to need to get it SBR'd if you want to put a stock on it or a brace on it, because it is not a one-handed pistol. So that kind of clears up the weight thing. Like I say, very arbitrary though. I don't see that that's cleared up very much. They didn't give a certain poundage, so I don't like that at all, that they weren't specific with the weight, but that's what it is. Another kind of vague factor about whether it's a pistol with a brace on it or an SBR also has to do with the height, I guess we'll say, of the rear of the brace or the stock. How much of the surface area actually makes contact with your shoulder if you do shoulder it. That's a factor also. If you'll notice, most stocks are about 5 inches of contact. So most pistol braces try to stay under that. They try to stay around 4 inches of actual contact if you actually do shoulder it. That's one little out there thing that I don't think most people think about, but that's one thing you can keep in mind if you're making your own gun at home or assembling your own gun or using a pistol brace on a firearm. If it's got, if the stock is in a way that doesn't look like it's designed to be put on the shoulder, or it's got a pad on the back of it, or if it's 5 inches or over in actual contact, you might question whether that's a fair and legal use of that brace, or if that brace itself is even legal. But I don't think you'll run into that problem with most braces, because most braces in themselves meet the criteria to be a brace. It just depends on what gun you put it on and how you put it on there that makes the difference. All right, now let's talk about a few things that affect manufacturers more than they do people who put things together at home, but they can affect you too. But they affect manufacturers more because if a manufacturer is going to sell a product, they have to worry about the ATF stepping in and going, you're committing crimes and we're shutting you down. Whereas if you do it at home, you're like, legal or not, don't care, not asking permission. If they got a problem, they'll come talk to me. But as a manufacturer, one of the problems they're running into with a lot of guns they produced overall is things that you would think have nothing to do with the gun itself. If they sell a product, let's say they produce a gun that has the right dimensions for overall length, the right dimensions for length of pull, the brace is designed properly, but it comes with a scope, a fixed scope that has eye relief. Well, that ain't meant to be shot one-handed. That's meant to be brought up to where you can actually put your eye to the scope. So that would be a factor in them saying, no, you can't sell it with that scope on it. Because you're basically saying this gun is primarily meant to be brought up to your shoulder. So if you're manufacturing guns, that's one thing you got to keep in your mind. If I want to keep this compliant, got to do that. Like I said, that's more of a problem for manufacturers. Another problem is if they produce a gun that, let's say, everything right about it is right, length of pull, overall length, the scope is good. If it does have a scope, let's say it's got flip-up sights or no sights at all. You add your own sights later. So probably is meant to be fired one-handed. But then someone puts a grip on it, a secondary grip. If the manufacturer does that, they're going to be told you can't manufacture and sell that because now it's got two grips. Therefore, it's meant to be shot with two hands, not one hand. Doesn't meet the legal definition of a pistol. Same thing for you. If you put a forward grip on it after you get it home, you have now made a compliant firearm non-compliant by making it designed to be shot with two hands. Therefore, it doesn't fall into the pistol category anymore, and therefore the pistol brace itself is not allowed. Because you can't put it on there, period. You can't put the front stock on there. So the gun itself is illegal now, simply because of that front grip. That's why they create like vertical grips and things like that to kind of get around that. But no actual secondary grips on the gun. If you've got a small rifle with a pistol stock on it, a pistol size rifle with a stock on it, if you put a secondary grip on it, you're violating the law. And that's one of the things manufacturers told you. You can't put those forward grips on it. You can't sell a gun like that. But they'll sell the gun and then sell the grip. And then it'll be up to you whether you put it on there or not. And if you do, you're breaking the law. And that's not new. That was true back in the day. And it's true now. So nothing really changed on that. And another thing to keep in mind when you're putting the front grip on, and this is where a lot of people have had a lot of misconceptions and a lot of problems. When you measure the overall length of the gun to tell you whether it's able to have a front grip put on it, forward grip, you know what I'm talking about. I shouldn't do this probably. But if you want to put one on there, if your gun's over 26 inches, you can put one on there. Not if it's including the pistol brace. The pistol brace does not count in the overall length of the gun to be able to put a forward grip on it. So keep that in mind. If you're going to measure your gun, if it's over 26 and a half inches, well, then you're probably not worried about your pistol brace, period. But if that 26 inches counts the pistol brace, not legal. It's got to be the gun itself. So that's something where a lot of people have had a lot of problem. I've had some questions about. All right, one last thing I want to talk about here is people saying, well, what if I have a pistol brace that's legal, but now in all these configurations it's illegal? Is my pistol brace illegal? No, pistol braces are not illegal. They're not even illegal if they're designed as a stock, because you can buy a stock. If I designed a pistol brace today and said, this is a pistol brace, but it didn't meet any of the legal criteria of a pistol brace, well, they would only be false advertising, and then I'd be liable if you used it incorrectly. But the braces themselves are not illegal. None of these items are illegal. There's not even a single pistol brace that is always illegal in itself. It's just that, can they be put with any gun and be legal? If the pistol brace is of a length that no matter what gun you put it on, it's going to be too long of a length to pull, well, then it's probably not going to be legal in any actual application, but the pistol brace itself is not illegal. And like I say, unless you're going around showing people how long your gun is and telling the ATF, hey, look, I put this on this gun, is this legal? You're probably never going to have a problem. So keep that in mind. The braces themselves are not illegal. It's how you use them and what guns you put them on. If you put a legal brace on a gun where the configuration makes it illegal, then it's illegal. If you use a legal brace with a legal gun, that say this is perfectly normal, perfectly viable under the FBI standards or the ATF standards, but then you decide I'm going to put an expandable tube on it where I can lengthen the pull an inch. Well, then now it's illegal because you added that extra part, you made it longer in the length of pull. It's really not all that confusing. I mean, it is confusing in the way that all these fucking regulations are confusing and they aren't needed and they're violations of our rights. But when you sit down and think about it, it isn't that hard to figure out. Citizens aren't doing anything wrong. It's just mainly this whole hullabaloo is about manufacturers wanting to prefab guns to sell in a certain configuration that don't meet the criteria, or sell you all the parts to put the gun together in a way that doesn't meet the criteria. And one of the big differences between now and 5 years ago, a lot of these companies were just getting the approval on their brace. The brace itself, which I say is not illegal, if they meet certain criteria, general length, made to go on your forearm, etc. And then they've been marketing it as if it is legal in every way you put it together. Any way you use it, this is legal, so you put it together in any combination you want. That's just not the case, because the stock itself is legal, but if you put it on like an extended buffer tube, or if you put it on a 2-inch extender on the back of a gun, it's now not legal. But they were playing the whole, let's just not ask. And then eventually the ATF said, hey, just because we approve your brace doesn't mean it's approved on every weapon you manufacture with that brace on it. And that was one of the points the ATF was making to people when one certain gun got declined. And people were like, well, why is it declined? That brace is legal. Well, because the way they're using it does not meet the criteria overall. And the way a lot of people probably used it when they bought the brace does not meet the rule overall. Does that mean now you're a felon because they made these rules public and you weren't before? No, you're not a felon now. You weren't a felon then. The only difference is you're committing a felonious act, I guess now, through negligence, and you were then. Just then you didn't know about it. That's really the only difference at the end of the day. And like I said, I don't like this whole notion. I don't think you should have to worry about, oh, does this make my pistol a pistol or does it make it an SBR or whatever? I think you should be able to take your short-barreled rifle, your 12-inch long gun, whatever you want to put on, put a foregrip on it, put a stock on it, whatever you want to put on it. And the government should not have anything to say in it unless you go out and start murdering nuns and babies with it. That's when they step in, as far as I'm concerned. So I don't agree with any of these rules. But I also don't agree with fear-mongering and profiteering and all that stuff, because I don't think it does us any good as a group. So I just want everyone to know these rules are invasive, but they're the same invasive we've already had. They're just all on paper somewhere now for you, to where manufacturers don't feel that they have the ability to manufacture legal items and market them in a way where they don't have any liability. Now they'll have a little more liability, and they don't like that. So don't panic. Don't worry. If you aren't a felon now, you weren't a felon then. If you weren't a felon then, you're not a felon now. If you were doing an illegal act then and you're doing it, then you're doing an illegal act now. But here's, like I say, the number one takeaway that if no one takes anything else away from this is don't ask permission for these things. It's just, I don't understand why people do that. Now, I don't want to put the blame on the victim here by people saying, I did this is illegal, and then the oppressor smacks them down. That's still the oppressor's problem. It's still their stupid rules. But if you're doing something and getting away with it, why would you go to the oppressor and say, look what I'm doing? I just don't understand it. But like I said, all this seems kind of complicated. But when you look at it all individually, like little line by line, and how they have that 4-point system, and everything's got to match this, and everything's got to match that, and if it doesn't, it gets a point. If it doesn't do this, it gets 2 points. It's basically the same system they've been using when they have approved any gun up till now. Guns that would have gotten approval 2 years ago will still get approval now. Guns that would have got disapproved now will have gotten disapproved 2 years ago. But the only difference is now people made a big enough public stink about it that the ATF had to come out and put it on paper and say, this is the criteria we use. The DOJ has signed off on it. Now you're all aware of it, so there's no excuse for breaking the rules. That's basically the only difference at the end of the day, and that's kind of something we brought on ourselves through people wanting to get attention and make money and blah, blah, blah. Like I said, which I think should be their absolute right to do all this without government intervention, but we live in a real world, so I wanted to address the real world facts about this statement and declaration by the DOJ and the ATF. So I just wanted to go over those things. And hopefully I've answered some questions. Hopefully I've assuaged some fears and some anxieties so that we can get back to fighting for our rights and fighting stupid things like the ATF without creating these unnecessary distractions. Like trying to turn something that's always been into something new and giant when it really isn't. It's just a distraction. It's a way to line the coffers for big groups. It's a way for manufacturers to rush the sales of their products. It's a way for the people promoting those manufacturers to get views and sell product. It's just a bunch of hullabaloo, like I said. And it is a shitty situation. But our situation as gun owners gets less shitty every day. And I think we should focus on that more than we should focusing on, hey, look at that pile of shit that's been there for 2 years, but we just now noticed it. Or 10 years and we just now noticed it. Or 20 years and we just now noticed it. Yeah, we're like, oh yeah, that's one of the piles of shit that we've been living with. And that's what this is. It's a pile of shit we've been living with, and we do need to change it. But as far as it being a new battle that you need to get worried about now and freak out about now, it just isn't that in any way at all.